All right, so we got Mr. Raymond Perez here. Everybody knows who he is. Like, there's nobody who doesn't know who he is. He's gonna go over, I guess, his deck that he's playing. He chose the Pioneer Tournament, which is the Inverter of Truth deck. Turn this way, man. There you go. So the new best deck in the format, some are saying, right?
Yep. It broke out this weekend at the Players Tour. It was very popular at Nagoya. It was the second most played deck at PT Brussels.
Yep.
I do believe there's at least 3 copies in Brussels top 8. I'm not sure about Nagoya.
Yeah, I don't know about Nagoya.
Yeah. There's 2 undefeated players on day 1, and one of them was playing essentially the list that I'm going to show you guys.
Okay.
So the namesake of the deck is based around Inverter of Truth, which was a usual bulk mythic rare until we got other cards printed. So when this card comes into play, it exiles your library face down, and then you replace your graveyard as your new library. Typically a bad thing, but they printed a new card called Thassa's Oracle, which combos very well with it. This card has a secondary win ability on it, where when it comes in, you look at the top card, or top number of cards in your library equal to your blue devotion, and then you can put one on top or put them on the bottom. And then if your library is equal to or less than your devotion, you win the game. So it's really hard to interact with, because if they let this trigger go on the stack and then get rid of your devotion, if your library is 1 or 0, depending on how much devotion you have in the field, they can't stop the ability. You still just lose. So this was a very vital piece that someone found and started playing this together. And then we have Jace Wielder of Mysteries, which is a secondary win con. The static ability, if you were to draw a card and cannot draw a card, you would win the game. And so basically, Inverter plus one of these is usually game over, because you would use the +1 of Jace to target yourself to mill 2.
If you have 3 cards or less, you win, right?
No, so 3 cards,
or less?
2 cards or less. Yeah, because 3 or less, you have 0 in your library, and you don't win that turn, but you'll win the next turn.
Yeah.
Or if you have an opt or some way to draw a card. So typically, it's between these two and Inverter. You set up a very small library.
Now, a tertiary win condition is just Inverter itself.
Yeah, if you have a big enough graveyard. Today on camera, I had like a 11 card library, and I just attacked with Inverter 3 times with Kalidas, and that was it. To be fair, this wasn't my library, so I would have won anyways if I had enough time, but who needed it? And then because these are the best colors for this shell, you don't want to really splash a 3rd color yet. Maybe there's some way out there, but 3-color mana bases are kind of wonky. You also get all the black interaction of the format, which is stellar. So you have Thoughtseize, which is arguably the best card ever printed, some say. And you also get access to Fatal Push. So these 2 go a long way with interaction. And then you also have Opt to help dig for it. And playing 12 1-mana spells in your deck really does wonders for the early game, and that's why this deck is so consistent. Also, op combos, if you have like a library or whatever, you can
it helps you draw your library out to win.
And then you also get to play the card that may or may not be banned one day with the ghost stamp on it. Dig Through Time, and this also allows you to control the size of your graveyard when you choose to invert. So a common play pattern is you dig through time, exile everything, leave like 1 or 2 cards, cast Inverter, and now your library is super tiny, and you have one of these pieces in your hand, and you just win the next turn or win the same turn depending. And then you just have other cards that people fill in. Some people play Censor. I like it because it counters and cycles. And then this is the card that is kind of the flex. The 8-0 list from Brussels had 2 copies of Ashiok Nightmare. We ran it as like a secondary win condition if they somehow have Slaughter Games or something in the main deck, like 5-color Niv deck, or just randomly pulling creatures, stalling for time, doing whatever you like. This could also be Omen of Thassa or Omen of the Sea God, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the blue Omen. The blue Omen.
Yeah, the blue common Omen. A lot of people have been playing that also in that spot. But outside of that, that's essentially it. You just fill it out with some more removal. You got
mana base is pretty good, right?
Yeah, good mana. You can play 4 Fabled Passage, which also helps push turn on, because Revolt's super hard to turn on without actual fetch lands in the format. And so yeah, this is the deck. You have sideboard plans of whatever you want. I have pack rats and stuff in my sideboard, so that I can pivot when they bring in like Lost Legacy, Unmoored Egos.
Okay.
I can just play a pack rat, make some rats, kill them, set out the removal.
Give you another win condition is outside of the combo.
Yep. And then you have counter spells and stuff. So yep, this is usually when combo control decks like this that play a control role and then combo kill you. When these decks exist, it's typically the best deck in the format because you get to pivot any different way. If you play against aggression, you combo out, or you just try and go as fast as you can for the combo. If you need to control the board, you can do that. If you play against another control deck, you have the ability to combo them out of nowhere, so they have to play scared. Another example of one of these decks would be like Splinter Twin combo.
Yep.
That was super popular in Modern when it was legal. They eventually banned Splinter Twin.
So now I have a question for you. So
Sure.
you're playing would be a control combo style deck, right? What
Yep.
feeds on that archetype?
Typically,
if you have, let's just say this is, you see this pop up now, and people are going to see this a
Correct,
lot,
yeah,
right?
yep.
What do you bring to counter this if you don't want to play this?
a good starting point people have been talking about is using Gideon of the Trials.
Okay.
Gideon of the Trials is a 3-mana planeswalker from Amonkhet. It has a +1, basically bubble a permanent. You can prevent any damage for the whole turn cycle until the next turn. So, lands, creatures, enchantments, whatever you want to target, you can target any permanent. Its 0 is make an emblem that says as long as you control a Gideon planeswalker, you cannot lose the game and your opponent cannot win the game. So Gideon of the Trials not only makes it so that Inverter can attack the Gideon, but it also makes it to the point where you can't win the game as long as they have a Gideon. So that's a lot of people have been talking about that on coverage, playing a lot more Gideons. In the event that happens, this deck would just play more Heroes Downfall effects to try and counter that, I would assume. But you also have Thought Seize and Thought Erasure in your deck, so you have the ability to strip that card from them before they get it into play. So I don't think it's a foolproof plan, but it's a good starting point.
Do you think it's the best card to counteract this deck? Currently, just off the top.
Yeah. Currently, this deck's only existed a little bit, so I haven't thought too much about it. I know personally, I would not want to play against mono black aggro with this deck.
Okay.
Because they have the ability to put a fast clock on you, and they have the Thought Seize abilities. So you could just stumble enough, and they can close the game fast enough.
So say you're not playing Gideon, or you're not sold on that. Like a mono black
Correct,
aggro might be a decent matchup, I guess you would say.
Yeah, like we have the ability to race, and they can't really interact with our combo, but they have enough disruption to prevent us from getting to that point, if that makes sense.
Did you feel the deck is too overpowered with where it stands? Obviously, there's not. It's just come out.
Right.
Where do we 2 days into this thing, and it's shining. I mean, realistically. So do you think there's to a point where they have to take action against the deck?
I could see, for the sake of poor play patterns, it's not a combo that takes forever to win with, which is good. Other combo decks or Cart Clan Ironworks were banned because they manipulated the rules of the game in such a way. Plus, it took forever to go through the iterations of it. That got banned for that power level. Splinter Twin got banned just because it was too oppressive. It was a gatekeeper of sorts. This could end up being that for Pioneer the more this shell gets tuned and honed.
Okay.
So I could see them taking action against it eventually, but I think that I'm of the camp that you should let it run wild and see how people react to it before you actually do anything drastic.
Kind of like what you're looking at with when Oko first got printed. It was one of those, everybody thought it was really bad, but you took that approach to waiting to see if there was something that came out.
Yep, and I think they waited a little bit too long.
Right.
But yeah, they at least did wait, which is good. The other thing too is that if they end up banning Dig Through Time, which is always on the watch list because this card is very powerful, I think this deck gets a lot worse in the current form. It could maybe do a different thing of maybe it goes to being like an Esper deck and plays Rest in Peace to try and control your graveyard that way. So I could see them doing something like that. If they choose to ban actual Inverter, then you could still have the Thassa combo decks, but they would be
maybe not
strong.
maybe not actually the piece of the combo, but the enabler that helps you, which is Splinter Twin kind of took that when they banned Splinter Twin. The rest of the deck couldn't
If
couldn't
they were
stick
to
together.
ban Dig Through Time, couldn't Treasure Cruise kind of fit the spot?
Yeah, it would be probably the next best thing because you just care about exiling the cards.
And so then you'd be going back to what they did with Modern, right? Which is when they decided that they're banning one, they're banning both.
Correct, yeah.
Just because they do similar effects.
Yep.
So I guess those are things to watch out for.
Yep, so, but for now, this is definitely the boogeyman of the format.
This week.
Yeah.
Flavor of the week.
Yep.
Yeah. Next week at the American Regional Pro Tour in Phoenix, I think will be a good determination of how powerful this deck is, because we all know that this is the deck to beat going into the tournament. So if it still continues to put up numbers at that tournament, then we know that we have a real deck on our hands. I'm gonna play this. I'm just locking it in.
Well, yeah. So you look at the point. You're back to it is a deck comes out, it breaks out, and everybody thinks it's amazing. But then you also have that second week.
Yep.
Somebody finds a way to just disable the deck.
Right. Yeah, and it's possible that those decks are able to attack this deck, but then aren't great versus the rest of the field.
Right.
So then it's like, if you plan on playing against 8 Inverter decks, then sure, play this deck. But if you play against other decks that are trying to hate out Inverter, then you might flounder, or vice versa. Play against a mono red deck, maybe you have a terrible matchup.
Right.
So there's all those to take into account. But I'm always of the opinion when a deck's this powerful and plays card manipulation, disruption, and a combo, I would rather just play this deck and learn the mirror match than try and fight against it.
Well, I appreciate it, Ray.
Yeah,
I'm
for
sure
sure.
everybody else does too. So we have the boogeyman here.
Do not buy these yet; they're too expensive. You missed the
We'll be
window.
posting deck lists. I'll probably have them up before this video comes out. So
So you'll be able to see the deck list and then put it with this.
because I assume
know
we didn't
exactly.
lay it all out and talk.
No, I just
No.
did one ups. Yep, for sure.
All right, thanks for watching.